Easiest chapter of all. So you need to be in full attention mode. Okay? Are y'all with me? Are we filming? This is chapter 51. It's on the nervous system, and the first thing we need to learn is the structure of a nerve cell. A nerve cell is called a neuron. Can you say neuron?
Neuron.
All at the same time?
Neuron.
Neuron is a cell that has the normal cell parts that we already studied. It's got a nucleus, it's got endoplasmic reticulum and ribosomes and lysosomes and all that stuff. But it also has some new parts that you have to learn. It's got these things that look like trees. We call them dendrites. And what they do is provide extra surface area to the cell so that it can receive signals from other neurons. You see, the neurons are cells that communicate with one another. They send electrical signals from one place to the other in the body. And those electrical signals travel really fast. And one nerve cell can take in a signal and transfer it on and pass it along to another nerve cell. We know that that's what thinking is. Thinking is the movement of electrical impulses from one nerve cell to another, and we don't exactly know how it works. But we know that's what thinking is. Because you can measure these electrical impulses by putting receptors on a person's head. Have you ever seen people with all these little things hooked up on their head before? And on TV or something you might have seen it. And what they're doing is they're reading their brain waves, which are actually the electrical impulses that are going on inside your brain, being sent from one cell to another. That somehow makes us able to think. We don't know how it works yet, but they're going to figure it out one day. And that'll be a really cool day to be a student or just to be a person understanding how thinking works. But anyway, we can at least learn the basic structure of the cell. So it's got this axon, these dendrites. This is called the cell body. This is called the axon. And the axon, this extension right here, this can be very, very long. You have axons that go all the way from your spinal cord all the way down to your toe. So they're like, in me it's like, 6 feet long, because I'm so tall. And but they're real thin. If I was holding one up right here in front of you, it'd be so thin you couldn't see it. But it would indeed be very long. And it would be covered, the axon is covered with special cells. There's the axon, this thing. It's covered with special cells, these little tan-looking cells here. They're called Schwann cells. Can you say Schwann cells?
Schwann cells.
And these are, the guy that discovered them is named Schwann. And these cells wrap around the axon and insulate it. The same way that this cord has rubber insulation on it to keep the signal inside the cord, the nerve cell has insulation around it to keep the nerve signal inside the axon. If you don't have those Schwann cells surrounding the axon, you have problems with the signal going through. Have you ever heard of a disease called multiple sclerosis, MS? People with MS have a problem with their Schwann cells. They don't form right, and they start to degrade over time. And that means they can't send signals along their neurons as well, and they can't control their muscles as well, and they stop being able to think as well. It's a very sad disease, and right now there's no cure for it. But these Schwann cells are very important in insulating the signal. Now there's a little area between two Schwann cells. It's called a node of Ranvier. This little area right here. And that is where all the action occurs, which I'm going to show you coming up in the next couple of slides and in the video here that we're going to look at. I'm going to show you how the nerve signal moves along. That's an important lesson. How does the nerve signal move from one place to another? We're going to see how that works. And then the nerve signal moves through here. It moves really, really fast. I'll give 10 points to the group that can guess how fast the nerve signal can go in miles per hour. 10 points to whoever guesses the closest. How fast does a nerve signal go in miles per hour at its fastest? You can't get counted off if you're wrong, so just make a guess.
What do you think?
Maybe for
10 point for closest guess.
is the accent sound
You
like
can't get counted off.
does the accent sound like the yellow? What if you're like the yellow
The axon is the purple part that's surrounded by the Schwann cells, which are yellow.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
How fast in miles per hour do you guess? Closest guess gets the points. Maybe the two closest guesses will get the points.
Mr. Willis is all of
I can feel how wrong that is.
You know, it could be right though. Because think about how quickly you
No,
can
the
move your
Schwann
body.
cell wraps around the axon
I don't know.
and
Either really right or really wrong.
insulates it. Keeps the signal inside and makes it go faster. Yeah? No. All right, we got everybody. Ooh.
Okay. Okay,
Oh my goodness.
Jason.
Okay, I'm going to give pink and purple and green. I'm going to give all y'all points. These are good guesses.
Got it.
Pink and green and purple. It's anywhere from 300 to 500 miles per hour. Is how fast that signal goes through there.
Thank you.
Bro, but think about like. It's not a billion.
No, it's not a billion.
150.
Billion was too high. So check this out. Think about this. If somebody touches your hand, didn't it feel like you felt that right away? I touched you? You actually don't feel it right away. Somebody touches you, and it takes time for that nerve signal to go all the way to the spinal cord, and to go up to the brain, and then for you to sense it. But it feels instantaneous, but it's really not. There's a
You didn't
split
really feel
second
it.
of time that it takes. Yeah.
Why do you not feel it when someone licks your elbow?
Oh yeah.
Well, you don't have as many nerve sensors on the elbow. So I didn't know that you did. Are you sure you don't feel it when someone licks? Why do people lick your
Licks
elbow?
my elbow in Spanish, so I can't feel it.
That's so weird.
You have a lot less nerve sensors on your elbow. You can pinch your elbow.
It's
It doesn't
touching
really
elbow, it's
hurt.
not licking elbow.
But if you were to pinch
No,
your
it's
face,
licking.
you got a lot more nerve signals on your face. Or your lips. Your lips have the most. This is why babies like to put objects in their mouth. They have more nerve sensors in their mouth, and they can sense the shape of it better with their mouth than they can even with their hands. That's why babies try to put things in their mouths. Isn't that interesting? So the nerve signal goes up to 500 miles an hour or so, down the axon, and then at the end of the axon, the signal gets there, and these little axon terminals, they release little chemicals called neurotransmitters that cause the next nerve cell to pick up the signal. And you can have many neurons communicating with each other to send signals from one place to the other in the body. So the next thing we need to learn is how the nerve signal is sent. And I need to get on this computer here. You can stay in the chair.
No.
I need to find this video. We have the internet is down, but luckily
How much longer do you have the boot?
I have
Till I
the
can walk.
videos on the hard
So
drive.
you can play and stay?
Till I can walk,
just cut it up?
hopefully.
Genuinely appreciate
Can you not walk with it at all?
Without it. I mean, I can hobble.
Like, if we
Alright.
put weight on it, we should just like fall.
Yeah.
Watch this video and I got some questions for you.
That's what I got. This one doesn't work for me. Yeah, it doesn't work.
It actually happened. I was trying to put like
No, very
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, very mean.
you know, I have to like
Well,
step
thank you.
and then did that. I'm so
No, that's not right.
I think recording.
yeah. But you can hear that.
Has Kodak on it, and the camera's black. 2017.
Oh, here it is. Okay, 10 points. First of all, I got 5 points if you can tell me what those are.
Okay, I think I got it.
5 points if you can tell me what that is.
I know what all of that is.
Can someone
5 points
else?
if you can tell me what that is. And 5 points if you can tell me what these are. So, A, B, C, D. A, B,
C.
You got it, American?
D. A,
Joe.
B, C, D. First tell me that.
Do you know what B is?
All right. What is it?
B video.
It's right there.
B video.
It's behind
A are
you.
these, B is that, C is that,
Wait, what's B
D
again?
is that.
It's like the round part.
A, B, C, D. 5 points each.
Oh, no, I know.
I mean, what was the last two?
3 right for orange. I'll do it one more time. Watch well. Watch closely. A are these. B is that. C is that. And D are these. All 4 right for verbal. Anyone else?
Hold on.
So, Mr. Thomas, so we total up the points each day, and at the end, right before the test, we total everything up. Whoever gets the most bonus points, whoever gets the most points gets 4 bonus points on the test.
That's such a deal.
Second place 3, third place 2, fourth place 1, last place none.
Such a deal. That's tricky teaching is what that is.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
Rewards and punishments?
You are tricking them into learning.
What is B?
I'll give all 4 to blue.
I need to make it all.
Although the second one wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Okay, I'll give all 4 to white. Pink.
I spelled some of them wrong.
Pink, all 4. Green.
We're not pink, we're green.
I'll give 3 to green. Anyone else?
What was B?
Did I get everybody?
I'm a little upset.
Okay, so here are the answers. These are. Here we go. These are dendrites. That's the cell body.
What the heck?
That's the axon. And those are called Schwann cells. You could also say that these are the myelin sheath because the Schwann cells are made of a fatty material called myelin.
What's the B? Number B? Letter B?
B is the cell body. Okay, so watch this video. Now, this guy's going to explain it first. This is the hardest thing, this chapter, so pay good attention here. This guy's going to explain it first, and then I'm going to explain it. See if you can follow it when he explains it. You're not going to be able to understand this if you're not watching right now.
Are we going to have 5?
So make sure you watch this. Okay? I might ask you some questions about it too.
Sweet baby Jesus.
How does an action potential occur? When a neuron is not transmitting a signal, there is a separation of charge across its membrane. This is called the resting potential. Sodium is in high concentration outside, and potassium is in high concentration inside the cell. The cytoplasm is negative relative to the exterior because of the presence of negatively charged proteins, amino acids, and other substances. When a sufficiently large stimulus reaches a section of membrane, sodium is able to diffuse in across the membrane following its concentration gradient. This depolarizes the membrane and is the stimulus for similar changes in adjacent membrane. Thus, the action potential travels down the axon in a chain reaction. After sodium diffuses in, potassium diffuses out following its own concentration gradient. This restores the membrane's polarity, but sodium and potassium have switched positions. The sodium-potassium pump restores these ions to their original positions, and the neuron is now ready for another action potential.
Huh? Did it make sense to you?
No.
I fixed the pen, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, what's
Okay,
that blue thing coming through?
So here, do you see this thing go through there?
The action potential.
That's called the action potential. That's the nerve signal. So what you need to understand is what that thing is. Why is this green thing going through real fast? And it goes through, like I said, at like 500 miles an hour.
Because
So it's like
it's just having a signal to do it. Cut the nerve.
Wait, I was numbing.
real fast.
Numbing.
Have you ever had an eye twitching?
Yeah.
That's just like, and it makes the eye go twitch. And you go, why is my eye twitching?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm going to explain to you why your eye is twitching. So, it all starts out like this. At the very beginning, you have, this is inside the nerve, the axon. So let's back this up and look at it from a distance here. Here's the nerve cell. We're going to look up close at the axon. We're going to look right at that little place between the two Schwann cells. It's called a node of Ranvier. Node of Ranvier, the yellow thing in there, that's the axon. And we're going to look up close at the axon. This little area between the two Schwann cells is called a node of Ranvier. And that's where all the action happens. So we're going to look up close here. You see us getting close in?
So
That's
the node of Ranvier.
We're looking at a node of Ranvier. Now, don't ever say, I've never looked at a node of Ranvier. Now you have.
What is it?
Who's Ranvier?
The node, Ranvier is a guy who discovered how this works. And a node of Ranvier, Anna, that's a Schwann cell, that's a Schwann cell. It's the area between the two Schwann cells.
A node of Ranvier?
Node of Ranvier. Can y'all say node of Ranvier? Wait, all at the same time? Pretty good. Pretty good.
Rebellious.
Okay. So, here's how this works. I want you to notice there's two ions involved. An ion is a charged atom. Grace, are you hanging with me? Y'all got to watch up here to understand this. This is not easy. There are two ions involved. Sodium on the outside of the axon and potassium on the inside of the axon. Now, Lachlan, are you with me?
Of course.
Up here. I want you to understand that sodium and potassium are both positively charged. They have positive charge. They're positively charged atoms. Another thing you need to understand is there's a whole bunch of negatively charged stuff on the inside of the axon that they're not showing you. And it makes it so it's negative on the inside, but it's positive on the outside because of all the sodiums. There are positively charged potassiums on the inside, but there's also so much negatively charged stuff that the environment on the inside of the axon is negative. And what happens is, when the action potential comes along, the nerve signal, here it comes, that is a signal for little protein channels in the membrane to open up. This is the cell membrane right here. And it has little protein, little doorways that will open up when the action potential arrives. And it causes the sodium ions to come in. Well, watch as the sodium ions, watch as this thing arrives, sodium comes in. And it turns positive on the inside.
Wow.
Just for a brief second, the sodiums come in through little doorways that open, and that causes it to be positive on the inside. And what that causes is the next doorways. The doorways are sensitive to a positive charge on the inside. And so imagine there's a little sodium doorway here. When it senses this positive charge, it's going to open. And so guess what will happen right here when it opens? Yes! Do it, Anna Grace. Sodium goes inside further down, and the sodiums come in, and the action potential moves along, and sodiums come in, and that's just going to keep happening all the way down the axon. Sodiums come in, sodiums come in, sodiums come in, and that just goes all the way down, really fast. Like dominoes being knocked down. Back when I was a kid, we didn't have video games. We would set up dominoes in a long line. And it took all day. And then you'd knock the first one over, and then it would go and knock the rest of them over. And that's what we did before video games. Am I not right?
You are correct.
And that's exactly what's happening here. It's like we call it a chain reaction. The sodiums rush in here, and that causes the next doorways to open, so the sodiums rush in, and the next doorways to open, so the sodiums rush in. And you can see this. You can see there was a positive charge on the outside, but when the sodiums come in, now the positive charge is on the inside. That's what a nerve signal is. It's a positive charge that moves down an axon at 500 miles an hour. And it's really just caused by sodiums coming in, causing it to be positively charged.
Do the sodium and does the potassium go out?
Ah, good, you were watching. Yes. So after the sodiums come in, the potassiums will go out. And this is just the way the system evolved. The potassiums go out through their own protein channels. And that will happen all the way through. And do you notice that now we've switched places with sodium on the inside, potassium on the outside? There are special proteins that will switch back the ions.
So before
And they all get switched back. And all that has to happen before another action potential can go through. So as your eye is twitching, all that happens.
Is an action potential basically just like a command from your brain?
Yes, an action potential can start in the brain.
How many are
Or it can start when I touch your arm. It starts an action potential in the neuron that goes to the brain and starts that signal being sent. So the action potential can be started in a lot of different ways. Yes?
Wait, what's the green thing called again?
So the green thing is an action potential.
Action.
Let me go back. So the green thing, here we go, the green thing coming through, that's the action potential. It's also, in common language, Anna, it's called a nerve signal.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Yes.
So, are all these nerves like only like in our brains, or are they like
Great question.
in your hand and then it goes all the way up?
You have about, I want to say the number is 800 billion of them in your brain. And then there's also a whole bunch of them that come out of your brain into your spinal cord. And there's also a bunch of them coming out of the spinal cord going to all your different organs and skin and everything.
Okay.
There's literally hundreds of billions of these cells in your body sending messages all over the place.
So when your eye's twitching, it's like from your eye back to your brain.
There's a nerve that comes from your brain and goes to your eye muscles
Okay.
and causes them to react.
Oh.
And so what's going to happen is when this signal reaches the end, reaches the whole end, let's go back to this. When the signal goes all the way through and reaches the end, the end of these things are connected to your muscles, you see? And it can connect to your eye muscle, and it'll release some chemicals that cause your eye muscle to contract, and so your eye twitches.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Andrew?
Yes. After the nerve signal comes and the potassium and sodium switch, do they switch back?
They switch back. And let me call that up again. Don't get up. I got it right here. If you watch, here we go. If you watch this video at the very end, so that the sodiums come in, the potassiums go out. You see how they've all switched sides? Now watch the end of this. They all switch back. Did you see that? Mm-hmm. And now we can start the whole thing over again.
Why do they switch back?
There's a special protein in the membrane that's in charge of switching them back. So they're not showing you, it would get too cluttered if they showed you all this stuff, but there are proteins in this membrane that can move these ions around. And there's one called the sodium-potassium pump that switches them back. Did I answer your question? Yes. Other questions about this? Lachlan, did you have a question?
I did, but I already answered it.
You got it?
What are you doing?
Anyone else? Yes, question?
No.
Just stretching?
Mm-hmm.
All right. The last thing I want to show you is what happens when the signal reaches the end. This is showing you the change in charge inside the axon. It goes from -60, remember it was negatively charged on the inside, all the way to +40, and then back to -60 in 2 milliseconds. That's how fast the change is. Do y'all know what a millisecond is?
Millionth of a second.
It's 1,000th of a second.
Thousandth of a second.
And so in 2,000ths of a second, those sodiums have come in and the potassiums has gone out and it switches back. That happens in 2,000th of a second. This is a graph of it. You can actually stick tiny microscopic electrodes inside a nerve cell and measure this.
What?
Scientists use giant nerve cells from squids. Squids have particularly wide nerve cells, and they use these giant cells and they stuck electrodes into squids' neurons to figure out how all this worked. Nobel Prize winning science, way back in the early 1900s. Yeah.
Would they be called neurologists?
Neuroscientists. Yeah. A neurologist is like a doctor who works on the nerves, but yeah, that's real close. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so let me show you at the end. At the end of the axon, as the signal approaches the end, there are what we call an axon bulb. An axon bulb is this wide area at the end of the axon. Let me show you where I'm talking about. I'm talking about right here. It's also called an axon terminal. You see how it gets wide right there? That's a little container that holds vesicles that squirt out chemicals. And there's one of the vesicles, and the chemicals inside of those vesicles are called neurotransmitters. Can you say neurotransmitters?
Neurotransmitters.
Let's try that again. Neurotransmitters.
Neurotransmitters.
Nice. So, when that action potential reaches the end of the axon, it causes these vesicles to move and secrete the neurotransmitters by a process called exocytosis. Do y'all remember that? We already studied exocytosis. It's like when a vesicle containing some material secretes it outside the cell. Y'all remember that? We studied that way back when, beginning of the year. Vesicles open up and secrete their contents. And that is what we have here. When the action potential reaches the end of the axon, these vesicles spill their contents out, and these chemicals called neurotransmitters can have an effect on the next cell. For instance, if it's a dendrite on the next nerve cell, it'll cause that cell to fire a signal. Or, if it's a muscle, it can cause that muscle to contract. It all depends on what the neurotransmitter is. Different chemicals cause different effects. It could cause the dendrite to be non-functional for a while. The neurotransmitter could tell the dendrite not to send any signals. There are a whole bunch of different neurotransmitters out there. You may have heard of some of them. Dopamine, you ever heard of that? Acetylcholine. These are names of these neurotransmitters. There's about 10 different types that spill out and cause your nervous system to react in certain ways. So I want to show you video footage of this too. Can I jump back over here? That link is not going to work.
So like when you have not enough dopamine, that's what causes Parkinson's, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And what Parkinson's is,
not spitting enough of it out, so you're not moving right.
well, actually, they think, as I understand it, Parkinson's is like there's so much activity that it freezes. Yeah. And that dopamine will slow down the activity enough so you can, you're not frozen.
Yeah, on the book it says
The synapse?
And I hear not so tired.
Oh, the action potential?
it says on the nerve impulse
I can't. Will you
Yeah,
film this?
yeah, that's correct. That's honored.
Oh, I'm struggling.
But it doesn't hurt you to know it.
Make everyone dizzy.
Okay, let's see how the synapse works.
Nobody even watched this.
On mine?
Is it a video? Oh my god.
Okay, watch this. Quiet, please.
As an impulse reaches the end of an axon, the wave of changing charges opens calcium channels, allowing calcium to enter the end of the axon. Neurotransmitters are released into a synapse by the process of exocytosis.
There go
The
the
dendrite receiving the impulse contains receptor sites that are linked to ion channels. When the neurotransmitters diffuse across the synapse and bind to the receptors, the ion channels open, changing the polarity of the receiving dendrite. In this way, nerve impulses move from neuron to neuron.
Does that make sense? So here comes the signal coming down. It gets to the end.
Turns into 4 fried eggs.
These
Busts on out of there.
these
Yolks.
things release and attach to receptors, and that causes, notice you have sodium moving in, and a new signal can be sent. I got a better video of it.
I want to watch this because I'm in it.
Wait, what's the time? Hold on.
Here's a better video of it.
31:10.
No, that's not a better video.
31:10.
Why wasn't it good?
This is a better video.
At a chemical synapse, a neurotransmitter molecule, such as acetylcholine, communicates a signal from one neuron, the presynaptic cell, to another, the postsynaptic cell. Neurotransmitter molecules are stored in vesicles in the presynaptic neuron. Some vesicles dock via specific docking proteins at the presynaptic terminal. An electric impulse, called an action potential, arrives at the synaptic terminal and docked vesicles fuse with the presynaptic membrane, dumping neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. Neurotransmitter binds receptors on the postsynaptic cell, which, depending on the specific receptor and cell type, open or close ion channels. Thus, the action potential passes to the new cell. The empty vesicles are recycled via endocytosis of clathrin-coated pits and take up more neurotransmitter to start the cycle again.
That was difficult, some difficult terminology in there. But check this out. Here's what I want you to do. 10 points, or no, 5 points if you can tell me what's the name of this big round thing here. 5 points if you can tell me what's the name of those little dots in there. 5 points for the big round thing here. 5 points for the little dots there.
I'm already recording.
Big round thing here. Little dots there. 10 possible points up for grabs.
Fred, what do you think they're called?
What do I think they're called?
Yeah.
I'm not telling.
Thing in the helmet. Found this in the helmet.
I'll give it to Blue.
The helmet. His hands.
Do we know?
Helmet.
Okay, I'll give him the purple. Not exactly what I'm looking for, but y'all are pretty clever here. Okay, white. Correct.
It said Billy.
Anyone else?
Hold on.
Wait, I don't know why it's funny.
10 points, or 5 points for what that is, and 5 points for what those are.
Ashley.
I don't know how to spell it.
What do y'all have?
Spelling doesn't count.
Nothing.
Spelling doesn't count.
Spelling doesn't count.
Is it?
Just make it sound right.
Give it some wrong.
I don't. I don't understand what it first.
Spelling doesn't count.
Lachlan.
Wait, is it
Fine.
the accent terminus? Or no?
I'll give you one right.
Okay.
The other one
It's terminal.
you don't even have it sounding right. Anyone else?
Okay, well.
It's fine.
No? Okay, so these things, this
What are you recording?
thing up here is called the axon bulb, or axon terminal. It's the end of the axon. These things right here are called neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters are released into this space here. We call this space the synapse. And the synapse is like the connection between two neurons. This is the next neuron. This could be the dendrite of the next neuron in the chain. So this is how communication works between neurons. Have you ever seen a reflex?
Hit me. Hit me.
Let me show you an interesting reflex.
Hit my knee. Hit my knee. Hit my knee. Do that.
Say hit my knee one more time.
Okay, look up here. If you hang your legs off the desk like this, so they're just hanging there, we're going to try this in a minute. And you take any object, this mouse works good, and you hit your knee right here, it causes what's called, it's the simplest response that an organism can have. It's called a reflex. And if I hit it right there, my leg kicks forward a little bit. Ooh, that was a good one. And you can do it on both knees. You gotta have your knees hanging loosely. Ooh, that was a good one. And you can't do it on one of these desks that doesn't. You need one of the bigger desks, because the smaller desk, if you try to sit on the front of it, it's just gonna fall. But let me show you what happens, and then I'll let you try it.
Should I stop the video or keep it going?
No, don't stop the video. When I hit right there, it causes a nerve signal to go up my leg to my spinal cord, and then in my spinal cord, there's a synapse, which they show right here. A signal comes up into my spinal cord. It synapses with a neuron in my spinal cord. A nerve signal goes down that neuron. There's another synapse. A nerve signal comes down and goes to your leg muscle and causes your leg muscle to contract. It contracts right here and the leg kicks forward. Why would that be important? Let me show you why that's important. It's a walking reflex. If you are walking up the stairs carrying a package and you don't realize that there's no step at the top because you can't see it, have any of y'all ever done this?
Yes.
What's going to happen is you're going to start to lean forward and you're not straightening your leg because you're expecting another step. And you start to fall. And that reflex will kick in. Because the gravity is just like this hitting here. The gravity pulls on this little tendon, which activates the reflex. And you kick your foot out and catch yourself from falling. It is a walking reflex that has evolved to keep us from falling. There are hundreds of reflexes like that you don't even realize that you have. They keep you balanced, keep you moving, and that sort of thing.
Your hand's not on.
Everybody try it. Sit on a desk like this. You might have to move a desk. And let your leg hang here.
Don't smack it.
And you can use...
Bro, mine's not working.
You can actually do it with just your... You can do it with your knuckles if you hit it right.
Bro, can you do it to me? I can't get it. Oh, I got
Yeah,
it.
you did. So it's right here.
Punch me.
There you go. Feel it? Oh, that was a good one. Hold on, let me get this.
He just said you're not doing it.
What? You like that?
Do that again. Do that again.
My leg.
Don't break the desk.
Like that.
Oh, I got it now. I got it. Check it out.
That was a lot. What happened?
Yeah. You do that?
Weird.
Ow!
That's the simplest action.
Right?
All right,
This has
clean
been
up the
filming the whole time.